Welcome back. You're still watching Power Breakfast right here on Citizen TV. We continue looking at the headlines this morning, and my panel just grew bigger as we were on the break. Rosa Bui, woman representative, Kisumu County, has joined the panel. Karibu sana, good morning. Congratulations, by the way, on winning that particular electoral contest. It's a pleasure to have you back on the panel. It's been a while.
Thank you, Fred.
Yes.
I'm happy to see you too. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And seeing you with more happiness on my face.
Of course, you're much happier.
Your wishes worked wonders for me. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the people of Kisumu County for giving me the opportunity to be their women representative. And Fred, I want you to keep on wishing me luck to do a good job for them.
Oh yes, we expect nothing less from you now that the good people of Kisumu have given you that opportunity to represent them. And probably I give you an opportunity to comment on the issue of the school fire, the very unfortunate incident that took place at the Moi Girls High School. Of course, Mheshimiwa Barasa has already promised to pursue the issue of having a safety officer in school as part of implementation of some of the safety standards as recommended by the Education Ministry. I don't know on your part what you'd say.
Fred, I'm going to move a little further and talk about the fires that also broke up in Sigoti Secondary School. That's in Kisumu County. I visited the school over the weekend, and it is just strange because there was an attempt the previous day at 8:30 a.m. when the girls were in class, and that was, they managed to contain that fire. And the following day at exactly 8:30, there was another attempt which was this time very successful because the whole dormitory burnt down. For me, I think it's really unfortunate because parents struggle to put up the schools so that children can actually have a comfortable place to learn. And when this happens, it's a real setback because a lot of money is lost, a lot of items are also lost. And seeing at the time that it's happening, it's almost exam time, and so everything is in disarray. And there's a lot of psychological trauma, and worse still, like in the case of Moi Nairobi girls, their lives that are lost. So I think we just need to focus and find out the real cause of these fires, because it's very unfortunate for parents to send their children to school and you think your children are safe and you're called at 2 a.m. and your child is dead. So I think we need to just lay a little more focus in finding out the real cause of those fires and make sure that we stop them before they spread too far.
Okay. Let's now delve into the political headlines, and we have quite a number today. Of course, we're back on the campaign mode already, barely 72 hours after the Supreme Court made that judgment which nullified the August 8th presidential election. Both the Jubilee and NASA, the presidential candidates and their running mates, have hit the campaign trail. Of course, on Saturday, even immediately that same Friday, the president was already in some parts of the city. The following day made some rounds as well. Yesterday, this is on the front page of the Standard, NASA was in Mathare, Deputy President William Ruto was in Thika, and we do have those stories. Jackie Mariba, our reporter, was in Kiambu on the Deputy President's trail yesterday, and she filed this story with regard to the campaigns.
For the second day running, the Jubilee Brigade would set their sights on the 1.1 million vote basket of Kiambu County, the backyard of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Deputy President William Ruto leading the recently elected Jubilee leaders to a church service in Thika, and thereafter a vote hunt in Thika town and Githurai.
They will not blackmail us, and they will not intimidate us. We are not going to look for brokers. We are not going to look for connections. We are not going to look for networks in the court. We will deal with the people of Kenya, because wao ndio wataamua uongozi wa taifa letu la Kenya.
The IEBC debate taking center stage.
Naambia IEBC wasitupotezee wakati. Watangaze ni tarehe gani ya kupiga kura. Wananchi wa Kenya wako tayari.
Mungu si atumani. Mungu ni mwema. Na najua ushindi huu utarudi mahali unatakana kuwa. Tunaenda huko chini, omundu kumundu. We are the only government in office that never spent time to interfere with the judiciary. because we knew that our win was clean. Number two, we are the only government that kept quiet atuku criticize judiciary before wafanye kesi yao. Lakini ule mzee wa kitandawili aliwatisha.
The Jubilee Brigade once again hitting out at the Supreme Court for their verdict, nullifying President Uhuru Kenyatta's August 8th election victory.
15 million Kenyans woke up early to vote and decide the leadership of this country. And there is no contest or dispute on the vote that was carried out by the people of Kenya. But 4 Kenyans have executed and orchestrated a coup against the free will and verdict of the people of Kenya. I want to tell them they have booked a permanent place of shame in the history of our country and in the history of the judiciary, and they shall be condemned.
Sisi tunaambia watu, we cannot allow 4 people to overturn the sovereign will of the people of Kenya.
The leader is calling on the supporters to remain steadfast and vote the Uhuru team again when polls are announced.
The people of Kenya are supreme and they will decide. Na uchaguzi ambao tunaelekea sasa, mashindano sio na sisi na kitendawili. Kitendawili tulimumalizia tarehe 8 mwezi wa 8. Mashindano sasa ni kuamua ni koti inaamua rais ama ni wananchi wa Kenya. That is the context we have now.
Uchaguzi wako kesho, sisi tuko tayari kupiga kura.
With campaign mode now on, the Jubilee Brigade intensifies its visits to its strongholds in the coming weeks to rally their troops behind them.
The Jubilee Brigade wasting no time in taking to its stronghold, calling out on the electorate to one more time come out and vote in what they are calling an affirmation of their victory once the IEBC sets the new date. Jackie Maribe, Citizen TV in Thika, Kiambu County.
And even as that happened elsewhere in Mathare, the NASA Brigade was there. Stephen Leto was there and filed this report as well.
After attending a church service at St. Stephen, SEK Jogo Road, the opposition leaders made their way through Eastlands for a Meet the People tour. At a rally at Masinda Muliro grounds in Mathare. The leaders saying after the annulment of the presidential election results, IEBC could not be trusted to conduct another election.
Mimi pale mkutano wa mwisho Hurupa niliongea wazi, nikasema Chiloba, nikarudia Chiloba, Chiloba must go home kama kutakuwa na justice Kenya hii. Hatuwezi kuchukua mbuzi zetu tuweke kwa fisi ya chunge. Fisi hawezi kuwa mchungaji wa mbuzi, wala kina Chiloba hawezi kuwa mchungaji wa kura. Tutaenda kwa uchaguzi kama tunajua wale ambao wasimamia uchaguzi ni watu ambaye hawapendelei pande huu au pande mwingine.
The leaders speaking a day after President Kenyatta and Jubilee leaders vowed to ensure that the IEBC team remains intact to conduct the rerun.
Wanataka kufuata tena. Hadi uchaguzi unafanywa ndani ya siku 40 na hiyo IEBC hiyo. Mwambie hiyo ni ndoto. And we want to tell you, Bwana Chebukati, can you clean your house before we go to the next election? IEBC. Tunasema, we do not want to hear that Al Ghurair is going to print the ballot papers again. Hakuna kitu anaweza kufanya kwa sababu amefungiwa kila kitu.
The NASA leaders defending the judiciary against attacks by the president, while also dismissing claims that they are rooting for a coalition government.
Tuambie sisi ati mkilalamika endeni mahakamani. Sio? Sasa sisi tunaenda mahakamani. Sisi tunatoa ushahidi. Si mahakama imeridhika. Alafu nini tena?
Bwana Uhuru Kenyatta, heshimu mahakama. Hapana tusi jaji mkuu, hapana tusi Bwana Maraga. Wewe ni nani? Wewe ni nani?
Raila Odinga, rais wangu, na safari hii ile timu ambayo tutaunda ya campaign wataona vumbi, my friend. Tunaambia the international community wasitudanganye. Walileta watu 20 kuangalia 40,000 polling stations. Tunawaonya waachane na siasa ya Kenya. We will deal with you perpendicularly. Mimi nataka tuende kazi sasa, si ndio? Wakiwa Mombasa wanasema hivi.
NASA now wants IEBC to gazette a fresh list of constituency returning officers and to blacklist the Dubai-based painting company Al Ghurair from doing any business with the commission.
The National Super Alliance says it is ready for a repeat poll and now wants the Independent Election and Boundaries Commission to gazette a date to conduct the poll. Stephen Natos, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Well, clearly the battle lines have been drawn, or is it redrawn? We're already back on the campaign trail. Very interesting headlines to do with that particular ruling, judgment rather, on Friday. That is the comments made there, the backlash on IEBC, the attacks on the judiciary. I've seen even a headline where Ekuru Aukot says he'll definitely be on a ballot box, on the ballot paper. Wavinya Ndeti now says she will challenge Alfred Mutua's election based on what happened at the Supreme Court, that judgment. But let's start off. It's like you were just waiting to go back on the campaign trail. At least now we have members representing both sides of the political divide. Rosa Buyu and Beatrice Elachi, Didmas Barasa and Piki Milili. Bona Barasa, it's like you were just waiting to go back to the campaign trail, because it did not even take hours. Within 2-3 hours, you were already back on the streets.
Yes. I think it is it's clear that after the Supreme Court ruling, we are going to go back to the campaigns, and from the Jubilee side we are ready, specifically from Bungoma, where I want to to bring to speed to my good friend Honorable Rosa Buyu. The ODM has no member of parliament in Bungoma, and the only leg that the Lion Party was using, I broke it, so the Lion is limping in Bungoma. So as opposed to the hard work that we had in August, 8th elections, I think we are going to move pretty well in these coming elections, because in Bungoma we have 4 members of parliament from Jubilee, and we have gotten the latest from Bumula, who was independent, who was frustrated in NASA during their nominations. And
so you feel bolstered, you feel much more confident, even more than you are in August?
Immediately, the advantage we have is that after we won elections on August, the people, the sharpshooters who are in NASA from Bungoma, now they are identifying themselves with us. And I think we have deflated NASA in Bungoma completely into on flat tires, and we are going full throttle. The question as whether Uhuru Kenyatta will maintain the same votes we got in Bungoma in August. Yes, the answer that we are going to double those figures, and that is what we are going to do. And in winning a political seat in other parts of the country, apart from Nyanza, I think you need to work very hard. In Nyanza, once you win the nominations, once you find a way, once you are a beneficiary of a shambolic nomination process, then you automatically will have very little efforts to put in to win the general elections.
But Beatrice Elachi, don't you think that it was a bit too fast at the return to the campaign trail? And even on one of the headlines, and this is on page 8, one of the stories, page 8 of the Daily Nation, where Kotu Secretary General Francis Atwoli spoke, and he actually cautioned about the fact that some of these leaders returned too quickly onto the campaign trail. I'm looking for that particular quote because it says, "If I were President Uhuru Kenyatta today, I would still be thinking what to do. You do not just hit the road immediately and start politically, because you will make a lot of mistakes in the process, and even people who voted for you could change their minds and say, hey, this was not the right person." agree with Bwana Atwoli to some extent, at least, that probably even both sides of the political divide should have waited, go back, sit down, re-strategize, because I'm assuming no one knew the outcome of the Supreme Court judgment, what was going to happen?
Well, first of all, I want to look at it at two ways. First of all, I will say, fine, nobody assumed, but when I looked at how everyone was walking into that court, if you tell me in my expertise of security, I'll tell you definitely at one point they had already known both sides their judgments. And two, now let us go to Kenya, and I want to look at both political leaders. I know my brother will deal with the political more with my sister here. I want to be objective so that we can understand where we are headed as Kenyans. When I listen to the political divide right now, I see a roadmap of both sides. One side, Jubilee, being very serious that we want to finish this thing in 2 months. My brothers on the other side have a very clear roadmap. Now let's go to that roadmap, Kenyans, so that you can understand we might play politics until next year. When you talk about you want to remove IEBC, it means you have to go back to Parliament to reconstitute everything. Remember how we started at Windsor and where we reached for us to get the team of Chebukati. So put that as your roadmap and dates. Then you come and you say you don't want the company that did the presidential printing. You need a new company. We are saying 90 days according to our laws. We have already surpassed the 60 days that the court told us. And then we move on now and then prepare for our elections, which maybe we shall still go back to court and the other courts will have started another. So if both sides are very serious about our country, then we would wish, Fred, that IEBC now guides us in a process to say the courts, because there is no any other court. You know, I'm looking even at politicians saying, we shall go, we shall do. Remember, we went to a Supreme Court where it is finality. There is nothing that can change anything until we do what the Supreme Court said. And that is one thing we should thank the Supreme Court, that they blocked everything for us until politicians go back on a drawing board. Within those 60 days, we get what we want. But then I want to look at also what my father, Atwoli, said, and who we respect so much in our region. And they say, yeah, he might be true in both, but also don't forget you have a base where people can also be wondering, why is it we 8 million people, we don't see our leader telling us now what is his way forward, is also another challenge. So in between, both leaders face a challenge where you must come out and calm your base. One side should be calming your base, because don't think that both bases cannot be strong. They are very strong, and let us not joke with both. So for both leaders to ensure the country is calm, and I want to thank Kenyans that after the ruling we didn't see the burning or the the tensions that we normally bring in. So first of all, to really thank Kenyans on that, but at the same time to say we have to move on and be now very vigilant on what we are trying to say. So I want a roadmap, and it is only IEBC that can now bring a roadmap and say, this is where we are headed. The moment IEBC does that, you bring in calm and this anxiety to the country, and now the country moves. So it is under Chebukati's mandate that we want to see the country move. And we'll be looking at the kind of attacks that both the judiciary and the IEBC have been getting from both sides of the political divide. But before that, Rosa, do you agree with Bwana Atwoli that probably politicians jumped back onto the campaign trail a bit too fast? That probably should have given it even just that one weekend?
Fred, what happened on Friday is exactly this. After the ruling, the country went into a frenzy. It was spontaneous. There were celebrations all over the country. And this threw Jubilee into a panic, because it was clear that the people they were saying had voted for them had not voted for them. Because then, how so can they be celebrating like they celebrated on Friday? In that panic, they decided to go to their strongholds to salvage, and to show the international community who had supported them or supported their win that they also have support. And that is why they immediately swung into action or swung into campaign mode. That is what happened.
Yes. And what happened with NASA, because we also saw them on the campaign trail hours after.
What? No, not hours after. Remember the whole of Friday.
We've just been playing the stories right now, Rosa Boo.
Just give me a break. The whole of Friday, NASA was not on a campaign trail. Immediately, almost 2 hours after the judgment was declared, Jubilee was in Bama Market. That was on Friday. And they've been campaigning ever since. Between Friday and Sunday, the first NASA rally was yesterday.
Okay.
After a well thought out plan. We had 2 days to think and to map out what we'd like to do within the next 60 days.
Are you saying now that NASA has already rolled out their plan of action in preparation for the
what I'm saying is this.
Elections?
NASA took 2 days off to plan and to take in what had happened and to discuss and decide on how they want to go
about it.
How they want to go about it from today on or yesterday on for the next 60 days. So we had time to think about it. But Jubilee, what Jubilee was doing was reactionary. Here they are faced with being caught pants down with all their 54%, 44% declared win. They were caught pants down, and it was clear that they had influence and they were part of the fraud that had taken place with the election process that we had.
Okay.
So they needed to come back together and galvanize their support base and sort of let them know that, hey, we are not thieves. We actually won, but the courts have taken it away from us. But that is what they're doing.
Let's be fair, because even the Supreme Court and the judges said that they're going to give the proper reasons, the full detail of why they arrived at that decision, and they will do so in the next 21 days or so. So even the import of their judgment, we do not know exactly the detail why they arrived at that. So who messed up where or not, apart from the indictment from that brief statement on the IEBC, we do not know any other details, whether there was fraud or stolen votes or whatever exactly. We still do not know the details. We'll get to know that. But even before we get this ruling by this judgment, the written version from the Supreme Court, we're already seeing attacks on both the judiciary and the IEBC. On one hand, Jubilee is not very happy with the judiciary. You've had the names that have been called. In fact, there has even been a promise to deal with them. I wouldn't call it a threat. Let's say it's a promise to deal with them and to handle the judiciary. I'm using the words they used. On the other side, we see a fresh attempt to change the IEBC as currently constituted. There are NASA principals insisting that Chiloba must go. Now they look like they no longer have a problem with the chairperson Wafula Chebukati. Now they've zeroed down to Chiloba.
I think you're
right. Surely, for how long will we continue attacking and demonizing these institutions, whether the judiciary or IEBC? And this is across the political divide. It seems that both political parties, the major political parties or coalitions, do not have respect for our institutions.
Fred, before you go there,
okay,
so that we don't finish just what my sister said, I want to tell my sister that after the ruling, while 2 hours, immediately I saw NASA in Uhuru Park. And
NASA did not go to Uhuru Park on Friday. Please get your facts right.
Let me finish, Rosa.
We did a tour around the town, and we did not go to Uhuru Park.
So they started immediately. I thank God she has accepted that they did a
tour without talking or without addressing any public. We went.
No, at least you have answered that properly, Rosa.
Yes, I think to me, President Uhuru going out to campaign immediately, to meet his supporters immediately, is good for this country. Yeah. He is the sitting president. When such a ruling is made, and the president, apart from issuing a press conference, goes into silence, the country can be thrown into panic mood. But by him going out and meeting his supporters is simply telling the rest of the country that, yes, I am ready to go back to the elections. Unlike many other African countries who may refuse to leave State House and saying, we are not going to leave State House as a sitting president. So to me, going out, and also if you interpret the Supreme Court's ruling, the CJ said that IEBC should conduct a fresh election within 60 days. So that 60 days, it doesn't mean that they wait up to, the 61 days before they do an election. It can come next week, but it can come after 3 days.
Now that you insist that we go back to that discussion, don't you think that both sides, the leaders, run a risk of actually making statements that stem out of raw emotion? That yes, the judgment has come out, there are some people who are happy, some who are not very happy with it, that when you speak so soon, you run the risk of saying something that you would have otherwise not said.
Fred, can I say this? The first time, if what I would have expected from the president was a statesman address to the country, so that the country would be together and the country would actually hear from their president. But when you saw the president come to address the country, this was a bitter president. This was a president who went on an insult spree, talking about judiciary the way he should not have talked about the judiciary as the president. I know that it was a difficult moment for him, but that is why he's our president. I'd expect him to rise above that bitterness and talk to the country like a statesman or like the position that he holds. And then after that, even when he begins to do his campaign, because nobody will direct you when to start your campaign and when not to start your campaign, I would have still expected him to now campaign on issues or ask for people's votes, as opposed to looking for forums to insult and to threaten the judiciary.
Okay.
Fred,
yes, sir.
When I looked at the president at State House, in the capacity of the president, he addressed the nation as a president. He never, and I want that clip to be brought here, because this is
Please don't bring it there, because it will be embarrassing to you.
It is not embarrassing. The president told Kenyans, greet your neighbor and say peace.
And the demeanor?
And he repeated, I don't care about the demeanor. Rosa,
no, words are just words, but the demeanor, the body language.
You have been in an election. I know you have been humiliated, so don't come here and because you have just won now because of Rosa Munga and say that. You have gone through that demeanor.
Humiliated?
And he repeated and repeated. And he was very clear at that time. He then changed and became the leader of the political party called Jubilee when he was in Burma, and therefore he addressed as a political leader, a party leader in Burma, to tell his supporters to cool down. So there are two, and when you look at those two ways of how he managed, I think he is a president. We must.
What was he telling his supporters when he went to Burma?
All of us are political leaders. Even me, when I lost Rosa, I felt it. But it does not mean you come here and say you have just forgotten how people lose and how they feel.
What was he telling his supporters when he went to Burma? That you people voted for me, we won, but 6 people have taken away our vote, and we are going to fix them. What are you telling the country?
That time
you are going to fix the judiciary, you are going to fix the highest court in the land. What hope are you leaving people with? That if they have a problem, where do they turn to when you've already told us that the judiciary is nothing and you're going to fix them?
Yes, Dismas Barasa, on this particular one, yes, there were quite some raw emotions, some very happy, some even, you could call it a bit agitated.
Yes, I agree with you.
They have waited a bit.
Yes, I agree with you, but the problem we have in this country, which is particularly not being played out clearly by my friend Ross, is that when Uhuru Kenyatta says I will fix the judiciary, is making a very wrong statement. But when Raila Odinga says I cannot share government with the fraudsters, then it's justified. So we need to address things with the very honest. That both the two political divides, they need to tone down and provide leadership whichever way is possible. It's not good to attack the judiciary. So it's not good for the NASA to call the president and his deputy fraudsters. If you read today's Standard, when Raila was responding to the calls that is after Mr. Mukate government, he said, I am not ready and I will not be in government with the fraudsters. I mean,
where is the wrong word, or where is the mistake there?
I mean, can you call someone a fraudster?
And why is he calling them a fraudster? Do you know why he's calling them a fraudster?
I think, with very due respect,
do you know what a fraudster means?
As Kenyans who have gone to school, let us follow the law. It's only the court of law that, through its judgment, can convict someone as a fraudster, but nobody in his mind is able to brand a fellow Kenyan, a leader, a sitting president and his deputy, that they are fraudsters, while the Supreme Court ruling, it was very clear that there is no electoral malpractice that President Uhuru Kenyatta did.
Yes, and remember that the indictment was on the IEBC, yes? And yet you're really trying to defend the politicians. I'm more concerned about the judiciary. And the cartoon on the page 14 of the Standard captures this moment quite clearly, where both sides of the political divide have at one point or another actually spoken ill of the judiciary.
That one I agree with you.
And one,
that is not right.
Yesterday, there's yesterday and today where one side says go to court, we have faith in the judiciary, while the other one terms the Supreme Court as court bandia. That was before. Today now, one hails the historic court decision, the other says the Supreme Court is our Kora court.
Fred, can I just say this? I wish you had the clip of Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga in 2013 when the Supreme Court had thrown out the petition and handed over the win or confirmed the win of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. I wish you had that clip.
And I've watched a clip going around on social media where even Raila Odinga himself quoted the number of judges and said 7 judges, 7 people cannot decide.
Just hold on, let me just finish. If you see what Raila Amolo Odinga said then, and he was not the president, he was an opposition leader who had gone to court to petition the election of the president, but he lost that petition. When he stood out to talk, what Raila Amolo Odinga said was he accepts the decision of that court, and guess what? He even wished Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto a good time in office and only asked them that they should further the democratic process that Kenya had already begun. Now when you compare that to what the president, in his capacity as a president, his reaction to the Supreme Court ruling, you will see a marked difference between the two. Okay. I want to say that when Raila said that 7 judges, we should not give an opportunity for 7 judges to decide, this is what Raila meant. And he said it very clearly, unless English was a problem then.
Yes.
He said that in our electoral process should be mature enough so that when 15 million Kenyans actually go out and decide who the winner is, we should not get into a situation where we still go back to court for 7 judges to be the sole decider of who the winner is. In other words, he was lamenting that our electoral process was being tampered with. It should be mature to the level that 15 million people vote and the winner is declared as the winner, such that we don't need to go back to court like we've had to go back to court, and then you have the judges being the ones who declare us and put us back on the path of mature electoral process.
Beatrice Elachi, why is this happening over and over again, that now we're counting even the number of judges, yet the Supreme Court is enshrined in our constitution? It is what we as Kenyans wanted. Why are we counting the number of judges and saying they're too few to make a decision?
Well, it's unfortunate that as politicians we will count. And I would say this. I think, Fred, when you look at the process we've gone through, surely, to get where we are, we have, first of all, we need to thank the courts itself, because I think at every point the courts have given this verdict on everything. Now, when we reach, my question will be, as we go forward, because we shall come back to this court again, Fred. We are not done yet until we get
yet
president.
We continue to vilify
I mean, we should just remember, we will finish. When we are done, we will come back to this court. Whether we will finish it squarely, again, we will be you will find someone back in court. So we need to ask ourselves also, surely, where we have reached as politicians, are we willing to agree that we can lose and win? Because this is something, Fred, I'm even asking myself, we went to pass a constitution. I remember we were so happy that for the first time we shall never look back at the top. And it seems we did the wrong thing, because we have just gone back on the center that we used to say, oh, we've gotten devolution, we are not going to come back to the center. To make it very unfortunate, it is the same leaders who katiba ni sasa na kama si sasa hivi. And they told us, we now have our governors, we don't need, what is this that is at the top that Kenyans now need to understand is so critical for us to fight tooth and nail, to spend billions when we know that we are having a country where we are headed is so tough that we must redo and redo this. So I want to ask the politicians as we go, are we going to accept the next verdict Kenyans are going to give us? Because they are going to give us a verdict we will put in history. Just the way we said this, and we did it, and now we are going back. And now Kenyans are coming back. Don't think Kenyans are happy.
Okay.
Let us not lie to ourselves and say there are no people who voted for Uhuru. 8 million people woke up without being pushed, without nothing. Just the way the 6 million at this side, the 8 million are there, and they are going to stamp their authority the way they stamped, even beyond.
Let's flip the coin now and talk about the attacks on IEBC. Well, because that is the other institution, and the Supreme Court ordered the IEBC to conduct fresh elections within 60 days.
I think, Fred, when you look at IEBC, really we sympathize with IEBC, because we have bashed IEBC. Chebukati, we have bashed our brother from the day he entered office. With all the challenges he faced, he has done us proud. We have governors, we have senators, we have MPs. Whoever wants to go to court, fine, you go to court, you get it. But you cannot bash Chebukati. And then we are putting him in a situation where, don't forget, he does not have permanent workers where you can say he has to go in, bring in people who need to help him. And that's what happened, Fred. These are not people, our presiding officers are not permanent employees of IEBC.
Yes, but
and you can imagine the short-term period we gave Chebukati because of the court cases we kept on giving, no training properly and all that. Fred, and the politicians knew what they were doing, Fred.
Fred, I don't sympathize with IEBC. You take a job because you think you're qualified to do that job. You don't go for a job without knowing what it entails. And once you get that job, the onus is on you to do it right. And to do it to the best of your ability with integrity. But when you take a job and you want to turn a blind eye to integrity issues that job demands of you, I've got no business sympathizing with you.
Yet,
what I'm saying is this. IEBC is an institution. NASA is not calling for that IEBC to be disbanded. What NASA is saying is that the court has pinpointed or might pinpoint in the judgment, the detailed judgment that's going to come out after 21 days. And if sectors or sections of IEBC will be pinpointed or will be held culpable for what has happened, those people need to leave and need to resign. It's like you're running a company and your financial controller is involved in theft or some fraudulent action. Do you just turn a blind eye and say, let him still be the financial controller because in a month's time our head boss is coming or something like that? You make him resign, or he resigns because he'll be ashamed of what he's done, and the company moves on.
Yes.
If 5 people will have been named to have participated in the fraudulent act that we saw in the electoral process, those 5 people, even if they left, it does not mean that IEBC will not go on.
Didmas Barasa, do you agree with Rosa Buyu that yes, the courts, the Supreme Court of the land, the highest court in the land, actually indicted IEBC in its pronouncements just from that simple statement it made on Friday that IEBC failed? That yes, therefore it means that IEBC is probably not 100% able to carry out the next election?
I think allow me teach my good sister a few things that NASA misses. One, if you can only have faith in a process not an individual. The fact that maybe a particular individual, an individual can be compromised. So what NASA should be focusing on is to implement the systems, robust systems that that are at least tamper-free, that are watertight, that will ensure a free and fair resource transmission and the rest of the things. Because if you have a finance manager who has stolen money, from the company. Changing that person is not only is going to caution whoever will come from being compromised by the same criminal elements, but what is important is the system, is the processes being made in a manner that is very difficult for them to be tampered with. So if they want a free and fair electoral process, as in Jubilee we have no problem with the personalities, but we have a problem. We really need to ensure that the system that are going to be put in place are robust processes, and they cannot be hacked by even, because we understand even NASA try to hack through the system to steal the elections. So what we want is that we are focused about the system, not the personality that presides over.
I think the systems were put in place, but the issue is, if you have people tampering with that system and then making us end up where we are, those people have no business being in that IBC. For example, just before Msando died, he had, the late Msando passed on, he had an interview that was aired, I think, on one of our TV stations. And he gave Kenyans the confidence of just how tamper-proof that system was. And a lot of Kenyans felt like, okay, we are going into an election and it's going to work. But if you have those individuals who still come in to tamper with that system, so that we have somebody who has not won to be declared as the winner, and somebody who has won to be declared as the loser, those individuals have no business still being in IBC.
Have you finished? Yeah.
Yes, sorry. If you listen to the Supreme Court ruling, the reason why they nullified the election of Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta as president is because of a few things like some forms didn't have a watermark, some didn't have a serial number, others were not signed, those kind of things. So they pointed out to the system. They did not say that somebody tampered, somebody stole. I think we need to be very honest and follow the law. And
irregularities are caused by
ladies and gentlemen,
it's not the system failing. It is people causing those massive irregularities.
Remember, the judiciary, the Supreme Court is yet to give its written verdict.
In fact,
and